This one was fairly recent actually, because I went to a school and did some of the books and so on, and then as part of it I showed the kids some covers of books from different countries, and I had a book called Passing On that was translated into Korean, and I knew it was from Korea and they'd sent me a copy, but I'd never found anyone who could read even part of the book. And I only had the cover, I didn't have the whole book there, and I'm showing it to the students, and all of a sudden, it was Linden Park, so raps to Linden Park, a couple of students look at it, and I can see straight away from their animated sort of response that they're recognising something there. I said, can you read that? And they said, yeah. I said, oh, great, how'd you come? Can you tell us all what it says? Because I've got no idea. And they did, and they came up afterwards, and we had a conversation about it.
That's
and,
cool.
And I know we've just had a couple of books with Chinese editions of books, and there's a similar issue there. So
we don't know what they say, we just hope that they've been translated.
And the difficulty is that in some cases they rhyme. So they rhyme in English. I'm fairly certain they don't rhyme in the other language. So there have been some changes, so it's interesting to find out what editors have done with that. So,
yeah, it will be. Well, one of them is Boom Bar, which is effectively back next year, so it'll be interesting to see when someone reads it to me just whether it does have that connotation of language that we have. So, and the inflection has been fascinating.
Do you want another story from me, and then I'll pass over to Phil? Yeah. This was fairly recent as well. This was in another country. This was in the Bronx, in New York, and I was working there as a literacy consultant. And for some reason or other, a school couldn't do a day that I got booked with the school, so I said, well, look, don't worry, we don't want you to lose the money that you paid for this, because they had to pay in advance, always a good idea. And I said, how about I come in as a writer, and they knew that I'd written some books, and I'll talk to classes during the day, and they said, oh, that's great, that's fine. And at the end of the day, and just remember, you're in the Bronx, and a lot of the kids there don't see a lot of writers. They have the books, but they don't meet and see writers. And I had a grade 2 class, and they're all fine. And then as I'm going out, I'm walking out the library as well, and there's a little grade 2 girl there, and she looks up at me because I'm 6'2" or something like that. She looks up and says, I like your book. Now I know you didn't hear that, but I didn't hear it either. So I said, what did you say? Oh, sorry, I didn't hear it. Can you just speak up a little bit? She said, I like your books. And I thought, that's wonderful. And then she looked at me and said, I thought all authors were dead. And I said, well, do you know what? Today's been very good news for you and for me. And I think there can be, if you don't actually meet some of the people behind the books or see them on YouTube or things like that, there can be a sense that they're just out there and they're very different. Whereas from our point of view, we sort of feel it's almost strange sometimes that we're in this position as writers, because we were kids who played soccer and were interested in other things and watched movies and did all those normal things, and then suddenly someone takes a book. So yeah, going to schools is great, and it's always full of surprises.
Which leads in perfectly to one of the stories I was going to tell, because I went to a school once and I was a junior primary class sitting in front of the year ones and receptions, and they all came and they sat in front of me, as they always do. And it's great when they come in, isn't it? Because they all look at you like this, as they walk past, and they sit down and they sit in front of you. But one little person in particular, as I sat to start my session, just over to my left, started to wriggle in closer, and he kept coming, and then he got close enough and he reached out and he touched my shoe. Then he put his hand away again. Then he came in, and I just kept going because you try and keep your concentration. And he came up again, then he touched my shoe and put his hand up and pulled at my sock. And I didn't know what was happening, and I just sort of turned myself away a little, and then he came up and he did it again, and he touched my leg. And the teacher told him, to keep still, and she said to me, I really have to apologise, I know what he's doing. And I said, oh, what's that? And she said, I told the children that they were going to meet a real live author. So he was checking that I wasn't a dummy, or
it's a good job he didn't check your pulse.
Exactly. All authors are dead or they're living. But another incident I had was I was at a library at a school, and it was lunchtime, and the librarian said, look, while you're here, would you start signing some of your books that we've got? So they had a little pile there, and I'm signing, and two little girls came in skipping up, and they saw me and they stopped with an expression of terrible disgust and dismay at me writing it, and one of them came up, and as I sat to write the autograph of the next book, she pointed at me and frowned and said, "No." No, I said, "But I've got no." And then she yelled out, "Mrs. whatever the lady's name, Mrs. Smith, he's writing in books. You're not allowed to write in books." So I then had to explain, because she hadn't met me at that stage. Her class was coming after lunch. But there are so many, and the other thing I love when, I don't know about you, when you visit, you're introduced, like I'm introduced as Phil Cummings, obviously. So little ones will never just say, "Hello, Phil."
Right.
When you're walking across the yard, it's always, "Hello, Phil Cummings. Hello, Phil Cummings. Hello, Phil Cummings." They use the whole name, which is just, but it's just, and you're right, it's a great thing to do, and you're passionate about a book, so it's good.
That's right, and I think sometimes, because both Phil and I have been teachers, there are times when you go in and you can see the adults behind the kids are worried about how the kids are going to behave, and the slightest twitch or movement or wrong question or something like that, and they're very concerned to make sure we're okay for the best of reasons. But I think we both smile inside and know that we can deal with that kind of stuff, so it's actually good fun, and sometimes the kids say amazing things.
They do.
It's
It's a wonderful thing.
So it's good.
Very privileged position to be in.